everybody. I'm Alyssa Logeman, and this is Alicia, and you are joining YSS Let's Talk Live. And we have never done this before, so you're going to be there with us tonight, and hopefully this will be okay. So, like I said, I'm Alyssa Logeman. I'm a mental health therapist here at YSS, and I work in the Boone office. In the Boone schools, and then see clients after schools in the office. So, Alicia, you want to introduce yourself?
Of course. So my name is Alicia Tannehill, and I am also a mental health therapist. I work in the Francis Lauer office up in Mason City. And so both of us together, we are representing the outpatient part of YSS tonight, and we will be talking about play therapy.
Yeah, and play therapy was one of the topics that we were throwing around. Office said, we want to learn more about, and Alicia and I both could talk about probably play therapy for hours, but we won't keep you here that long, I promise. But we just kind of wanted to let the community know a little bit about play therapy and hopefully kind of give you a little bit of an interest and understanding tonight about what that is. So we're going to kind of run this as a dialogue between Alicia and I'm going to throw her a question, and then she can answer, and then we'll just throw questions back and forth at each other. So our first question was, Alicia, can you tell me the types of concerns that somebody might come to play therapy for?
Sure. So in play therapy, we see a whole wide range of things. I mean, from concerns like anxiety and depression and trauma, maybe the loss or death of somebody, maybe problems in school, moving, adoption, foster care, anything and almost everything you can that we can be seen for play therapy. And, as also part of that process, we do make a diagnosis, but however, the diagnosis is important, but mostly what we do as play therapists is really treat and focus on what those concerns are and what those symptoms are that we're seeing. So that's what's most important for us. So kind of taking a step back, what is therapy in general?
Yeah, so when we were kind of talking about this a little bit, we were kind of talking about this analogy that I like to use with parents. If you were in therapy as an adult, you might sit in an office with a therapist across from a therapist and kind of talk out your concerns or your issues or kind of some things that have been on your mind, and the therapist is going to pose questions back to you, challenge your thinking on those things, just kind of help you kind of unravel everything that's going on. And another way of kind of looking at it is therapy is the body's kind of helping support the body's natural ability to heal. So if you were to get a cut on your hand for some reason, right, your body automatically sends signals to your hand to start getting white blood cells going and start the healing process. And as therapists, we believe that your mind does the same thing, that when you have some sort of emotional difficulty or a big situation happen in your life, that your brain and your body have a natural ability to kind of work on healing, even emotional healing. So we believe that that's similar in therapy. So, Alicia, tell us a little bit about play therapy.
Sure. So before I tell you about it, we have a video that we would like you to watch about Andrew. So we'll get that pulled up here for you to watch.
Well, hey, Andrew, how was school today?
Well, it was a very frustrating day. Tommy was teasing me about my haircut, and that was embarrassing. As a way of coping with my embarrassment, I became angry. I'm ashamed to admit it, dear mother, but I could not resist striking Tommy with my fist. While this act of emotional release did offer a moment's respite from my embarrassment, the victory was short-lived. The next thing I knew, Tommy had immobilized me with a headlock and gave me what is referred to colloquially as a swirly.
This isn't how kids communicate, but they do communicate in other ways. Play is a child's first language. When a child plays, they express thoughts and feelings that would otherwise remain hidden. That's why play therapy can be a powerful tool for addressing a child's cognitive, behavioral, and emotional challenges. Licensed mental health practitioners use play therapy to help children process their experiences and develop more effective strategies for managing their world. To learn more about play therapy and registered play therapists, visit a4pt.org.
Oh,
I really just needed chocolate milk on the rocks and a long soak in the tub.
Love that video.
Oh, such a classic. Yes. So, I mean, as you see in the video, as Andrew comes home, that's not what kids are going to do. They're not going to come home and just tell you all about that and think through the emotional piece and tell you exactly why they did this and that. And so that's where play comes in. So like the video said, play and toys are a child's language. And so that's the basis for play therapy, is that that's what we use as the therapy, as that model for change. And that video is from the Association for Play Therapy, which is the kind of credentialing body and helps to do or regulate what are called registered play therapists, and just helps to strengthen the field of play therapy in general. So here is their official definition of what play therapy is. Hang on, it's kind of lengthy. It is the systematic use of a theoretical model to establish an interpersonal process wherein trained play therapists use the therapeutic powers of play to help clients prevent or resolve psychosocial difficulties and achieve optimal growth and development.
Yeah, so that's a mouthful.
Totally a mouthful. But basically, like we just said, it's using, people that are trained in this are using play and just different based activities to deliver therapy to children.
Yeah, we kind of talked about when we even looked up that definition that we don't probably use any of those words in language except play and, play therapists. So that's a lot of kind of things different big words to use to describe our play.
Yes.
Did you want to talk a little bit? I know we showed the kind of the website for the Association of Play Therapy, but talk a little bit more maybe about the registered play therapist license and things like that.
Sure. So I'm actually going through this now. I'm just a couple months away from getting my RPT. But basically, thank you. Alyssa is fully an RPT, so it's exciting for her. But basically what it is, it's at least a 2-year training process where you have to get specific educational hours and in specific areas related to play therapy. You have to be under supervision and receive a certain amount of hours there. And then you also have to have a certain amount of direct client contact hours too. And this has to take at least 2 years to get this done. And so it is quite a lengthy process, but it just helps to show that you know what you're doing, and it just helps to strengthen the field of play therapy. So it's a really good thing.
Yeah, it's really great too, because we can kind of use, as a play therapy field, we kind of can use some more studies and validation that we're really, all the steps that we're taking really benefit the client overall. So that's great.
Mm-hmm,
it is a really big process, and we're so excited that Alicia's gone through all that work, and it's a really great opportunity just to kind of learn very specifically about play therapy. So,
okay, so now you might be wondering, what does a session of play therapy look like?
Yeah, so There's actually two types of play therapy. There is something called directive play therapy or non-directive play therapy. And directive play therapy is activities that are specifically maybe given by the therapist with the client to do to with a very specific goal that the therapist wants the client to achieve. So an example of maybe a solution directive activity that I might give a client is to build a house out of Legos. And every time that you use a different color, I want that color to represent a new feeling. So if you have a ton of green in your house, maybe we have a ton of nervous feelings in there. If we have yellow, then we've got happy. And so the goal of that for me as a play therapist is I'm expanding their feeling vocabulary. We're working on different ways to express feelings in a safe and comfortable way. We're also working on kind of questioning some of those things. So not only can you identify different feelings, but you can also express them to me. What makes you feel that way? And then I might push back and challenge a little bit in that is that situation that you gave me really that feeling, or is it related to this? Is it maybe this one? Does that fit better? Or I noticed that you're saying this feeling and this description, but those don't really seem to match. So kind of working on some of those things. That would be a very directive activity that we would do. One of the things that I have additional training in is something called OT play. And OT play is play therapy for kids with autism. And it works very specifically, actually at the start of the therapy process, we do a bunch of assessments that OT play has put together to rate different areas of concern. So maybe rate your emotional connectedness, rate your social skills. And then we take those ratings and we work very specifically in each of those areas to improve those areas with specific directed activities like we just talked about. So there's a whole manual with tons of activities to kind of directly go at the areas of concern.
Mm-hmm.
So I also talked about a little bit that there are two types. So that's directive. Non-directive is where the kiddo leads the play and we as a therapist take a back seat or to the play, and we help them by supporting them and giving them just the things and the space they need to kind of work on different things. So maybe Alicia, can you explain a little bit more about that?
Definitely. Yeah. So like Alyssa was saying, these type of sessions are where the therapist lets the kiddo lead the way. So just really opens up the playroom, any activities, anything they choose. And the idea is just knowing that the kiddo knows where they need to go that day. And so the therapist just provides, that support and that validation throughout their play and as they're working out whatever they're feeling like they need to do that day. And also kind of the role in the therapist in that session too. Maybe we're noticing some themes in their play. So maybe a lot of nurturing themes they're doing, playing with a lot of the kitchen or the dolls or kind of family stuff. Maybe they're doing more value play or maybe some mastery play where they're just showing off some of the skills they have. And then we're also kind of looking for some metaphors. Again, the idea is that they're acting out what they're feeling and they're playing out what they're feeling. And so we just kind of look for those metaphors and see how maybe what they're playing is reflecting what's going on in their life. So just some of the things that the therapist just kind of watches out for in these types of sessions. And again, just really provides that support to the kiddo as they play out what they need.
Yeah, I think there's something there too of like, we talked about at the beginning, like what an adult session would look like. And as an adult, we have a little bit more emotional regulation to be able to talk very directly about big issues. So I can come in and I can talk about my marriage, or I can talk about the car accident that happened to me, and stay emotionally connected and able to talk through that, where a kiddo can't necessarily do that. They don't have kind of the words that we talked about at the beginning to be able to explain exactly what happened. And they don't have the emotional regulation to be able to tolerate the amount of stress that that's causing. And so we look at those play themes, and the metaphor of whatever they're playing out allows them to have that separation, that the two puppets can argue and yell at each other and scream at each other and maybe hit each other. But that's different than my mom and my dad do that at home. I can talk about it when Turtle does it to Rabbit, but I can't talk about it when Mommy does it to Daddy. And so as a play therapist, we can kind of look at those things and those themes that continue to come up throughout session, and address them, like kind of work through that metaphor to help the child kind of work through that conflict that they're processing, and trying to understand.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so we see a lot of different things in our playroom.
Yes, we sure do.
And I think the other thing we can do too is as kind of, well, I think we'll touch on this in a few minutes, but I'll touch on it now just briefly, is kind of working on those themes of like, what ways can we communicate to the parents that we need support? So if the kid is doing a whole lot of nurturing play and play where they're, maybe seeking out comfort and affection, or they're nurturing the baby doll, kind of talking to ways that parents maybe build in some time to give that kiddo that nurturing. Or if we're in a metaphor and the kid we've kind of figured out that in this metaphor, kid is Turtle, and Turtle is talking about how all he wants is his parents to tell him that he loves him, or things like that, that we can kind of read in between those lines and help the parents go walk back and support the kiddo in that.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, jumping on to our next thing. So, I mean, what does a play therapy room look like?
Yeah, so we actually took a video. We just had a brand new, put together our new playroom in Boone. And so I did a walkthrough for you a little bit. So we will play that video. And I think you can probably hear me as the video doesn't have sound, but I'll just kind of explain. There's beanbag. There's our dress up setup. We've got the dollhouse in the corner. The puppets are hanging up. A lot of figures there. The dolls, the kitchen, and then all of our things laid out for sand tray, building blocks, and the sand tray itself. And so that's kind of what it looks like. I'm standing in the big space in the center, which normally is full of lots of different things. So it's great to have all of that space to be able to kind of connect and play out the things that we need. One of the things we talked about in there is, or one of the metaphors that we use a lot is the building blocks. We can make all sorts of structures, walls for protection, maybe dressing up and being imaginative. We talked about using the puppets to kind of create that space. Sometimes kids will play out scenes in the dollhouse, or different things like that. There's also art supplies that you don't really see in there. They're in the cupboard. And using those things if we need to draw something out. Kind of that sensory experience is in the sand. If kids are really sensory seeking, we spend a lot of time in the sand. So Yeah.
I'm going to jump in here. It looks like we had a good question we wanted to answer. So the question was, does non-contact play ever become contact play because of a need? So I'm guessing that question is based on kind of that directive versus non-directive we were talking about. And the answer is absolutely yes. A lot of the times we can jump back and forth between the two types, even within the same session. Sometimes an example might be, we as a therapist really know that sometimes the kid just needs some time to just feel in control and kind of get out what they need to. So maybe the first part of the session will be more non-directive and the kiddo leads that part. And then at the second half of the session, that might be where the therapist chooses what they do. So there's a lot of flexibility in that. There are some therapists who are strictly one or the other. But I know I can speak for both of us and say that we're kind of a little bit more flexible on that. And personally for me, I kind of just decide whatever the kiddo needs. Each one is different. Some of them need a little bit maybe more structure, or maybe need me to kind of lead sometimes and be more directive. Some kiddos just need that space to just be however they need to be. And so we allow them to have that too. So there's a lot of flexibility in that.
Yeah, I think another kind of along that question line is that one of the situations I can think of that maybe happens quite often is that a parent will come in and say, this big thing happened this week. I just wanted to give you the heads up. I may touch base with the kiddo about that for the first few minutes of the session and say, hey, sounds like mom and dad talked to me about this and this happened. And then maybe I would give a directive around that of do you want to just go in the playroom, or do you want to go in my office and do an activity with that? And so then we might, do it that way and kind of switch that up. The other way that I do non-directive and directive is that I like to end my sessions with kind of that coping skill and skill building. I think a big thing that all kiddos need is that emotional regulation and those healthy coping skills. And so I like to spend the last 5 minutes coming back to my office. It kind of allows us a natural break and calming space from the session that we just did to come and practice in my office with a directive activity to practice one of those coping skills. So oftentimes in my office, it's blowing bubbles, and I have feeling bubbles. And so we talk about taking a deep breath and blowing all your feelings into that bubbles, can you make a big bubble? Can you make tons of little bubbles? And so just kind of working on that breath control to kind of help us regulate a little bit. And then, we get some good feeling expressions in there too. And practice just verbalizing those things.
Yes. I love bubbles too. They're a classic.
They're really great. And my office is always covered in soap. It's fine. Yeah. Okay. So we kind of talked about what a common playroom might look like. So that was a non-directive playroom that we showed you. Alicia and I are both sitting in our offices conveniently. And so maybe we can kind of talk a little bit about how our offices work for play therapy in a directive and non-directive way. So Alicia, I'll let you go first, and I will grab some things around my office to show people.
Sure. So I, unfortunately, here in Mason City, don't have the luxury of having a separate playroom. So my office does double duty as, a typical office that I might see an adult in, or somebody I'm not doing play therapy with, but also with my play therapy kiddos as well. So you can see a little bit on the shelf behind me. I have some games up there. I have some of my crafts and kind of craft supplies. Over on this side over here, I have my shelves with all my figurines and things. So kind of just pull double duty and make it work. Typically I do some non-directive sessions in here and just kind of open those areas up to kiddos. But a lot of it, just because of the space and how it is, I typically do a little bit more directive just because how my office is. But it can do double duty, and I certainly make it work.
Yeah. I forgot to mention in our play therapy office in Boone, we don't have one of these, but if you went to another place and did play therapy, they might also have a window in their play therapy room. So some play therapy offices has a dual window, a two-way mirror, so that parents can sit on the other side of the mirror and see kind of what's going on in the session. And that the kiddo can't see in from inside. So you might see that in another space, and that you would be able to do that. That's also a great tool for kind of training exercises and things, to get supervision. So you have hands-on things like that. That also goes with PCIT, which is another therapy we do here that we use that two-way mirror. So I was thinking about things that I have in my office. So I have books. We were going to talk a little bit about these. Oh, goodness. So I've got just some different therapy books that sometimes if I have a specific topic that a kiddo is working on, kind of that directive play theme, we might go through the books. Some kids need something what's called social stories. So they're very short little segments of like pictures and just maybe a few words or maybe even no words of what to do about a given topic. So how to wash your hands or how to play nice with others. I have a book that's called Hands Are Not for Hitting. That's one of those. Got another book. I've got some games like Alicia talked about, some hands-on games. Those games can be, depending on the play therapist and the lens that you're going to, you may or may not find those in a non-directive playroom. Those are hard because games have very prescriptive rules on how to play them. And a true non-directive play therapist is not going to have those in their office because they are letting the child lead. So the child will play those games however they want to, and they're not going to play by the rules. Now, that being said, I've got kiddos in my office that need to work on frustration tolerance and taking turns and that social interaction. So we may play a few games and practice, taking a deep breath when we get frustrated, the importance of continuing on playing a game even when we're behind and we hate it. So kind of working on those things and modeling that for the kiddos of how to do those things in a different way. I also have my sand tray. You can't really see it. Oh gosh, and now my camera shut off. Okay, I'm back. I also have my sand tray behind me. And so that's another one of those things that we have in the playroom, but also can do that in office as well. Trying to think here. So Alicia, can you tell me a little bit about the role that we have for parents and caregivers in play therapy?
Yeah, so I think you alluded to a couple of them earlier. Several different roles that a parent or a caregiver might play in play, or the role they might have in play therapy. Sometimes a therapist might invite them into the session, either to just have them maybe learn some of these play therapy techniques, kind of work through something with their kiddo through play, just any things they can do there. And Alyssa was talking about that two-way window. Sometimes have the luxury of having the parent be able to observe a session, to just kind of see, just whatever the therapist might want them to see in that. And probably the most common one, maybe meeting with the parent alone, and just talking about some strategies for that parent or caregiver to use at home, either that the therapist is finding helpful in the session, or just ways to support their kiddo at the home. A lot of those usually involve, just different ways to help them communicate, ways to model coping skills, model that emotional regulation, just any of those things. Or sometimes, we talk about maybe just different reward systems you can put at home, or a lot of maybe strategies regarding discipline. That's a really popular topic that we get. Just anything. And usually kind of the younger the kiddo is, typically more involved the parent or caregiver is in the actual session, just to help support them. But no matter the age of the kiddo, always love to have that parent or caregiver involved to help what we're working on in the office be able to be transferred to home. It's a very important role they play.
A couple things to add to that. We love parent involvement and could always use more of that. I think there's, a big thing about, so we want to understand the kiddo's perspective, but also the kiddo's perspective isn't the full picture of what they're doing in the home, what other factors may or may not be going on that they don't or do know about. So sometimes, kiddos pick up about, fighting between the parents. And it's really helpful to kind of know from the parents what's that's about. Is it about them? Does it have anything to do with them at all? Or are they just picking that up? Is there stuff that our kiddos are conveniently forgetting to tell us about the fact that I, got in trouble and am not at school this week because of X, Y, and Z? Or, I got sent to the principal's office, or, things that they maybe need an adult in their lives to kind of give us a window into some other things that are going on that we need to be aware of. The other thing that I was thinking, and I referenced this earlier, is OT play. And one of the things that OT play does in its own kind of play therapy lens is that not only so the practitioner or the therapist is teaching the kiddo these skills or this specific strategy they're working on, then the therapist and the kiddo teach that to the parent. And the parent's job is to go home and have the kiddo practice that at home during the week. So that also gets implemented at home as well. And I think there are certain things that we, if we're working on kind of emotional regulation, or we're working on, I'm teaching those skills at the end of the session of those coping skills of deep breaths and things like that. I want parents to be aware of those things so they can kind of just cue those things to the kiddo of like, hey, remember with Alyssa, you were working on those deep breaths? Why don't we try that here? Or, oh my gosh, look at you. I can see those deep breaths you've been working on, so we're kind of giving them that positive feedback and that kind of mental inner talk to themselves about those skills that they, were working to apply big picture. Yeah. So I think that was all I had on parents and caregivers.
Yes. Okay. So now we'll just talk about maybe some common concerns or common questions that we get from parents or caregivers about play therapy.
Yeah. We hear a lot of these. So we put on the ones that we hear a lot of. And I think a lot of them kind of go back to kind of trusting the process a little bit. I think, even, and Alicia, you can jump in here if you had more to add, but I think even as I've grown and gotten my RPT and continued to work with kiddos in play therapy, the more that I kind of believe this model that the kids really know where they need to go and what they need to work on to grow. And so oftentimes what we hear is kind of a little bit of hard stuff as far as like, well, you guys have been doing this for, a couple months now, and all Sammy comes in and says after play therapy is that you guys played the whole time. And I just want to know that you guys are working on something. And we love that feedback. So please come in and ask us like, hey, I'm just concerned about this. We want to do a good job as therapists to be able to tell you, hey, these are the themes we're working on. Hey, this is, kind of the big picture stuff that we're working on in sessions. And so we aren't just playing. That may be what Sammy sees in the session, right? Is that we played Uno. But again, they don't have the words to say, I'm building my frustration tolerance. And I played out today a scene on the playground that really upset me, or things like that. They just don't quite have that insight into that. And so the other thing is they don't even talk. They don't talk to me. They don't talk in therapy. They just play. They just play Uno. I get that a lot. And you won't believe the number of kids that Uno is magic. It is magic. I don't know what it is. Middle schoolers and Uno. They just start playing the game and suddenly their whole life story spills out. And if you ask them after session what we did, they will tell you that they played Uno. And I can not tell you the number of times that they did not just play Uno. And so I think, there's a lot of just them not understanding or not recognizing how much of their world they're processing when we allow them to have space for whatever they need in a session.
Yeah, and going off of that talking piece, maybe they're not verbally talking or saying those words, but they're saying so much through their play or what they're doing. And so, I mean, they are talking, it's just in a different way. And I will just second the magic of Uno. I can't even imagine how many Uno games I've played. And it's just, there's something about it. It's really great.
Yeah. Yes, Uno.
Yes.
I don't know. I never thought that my 90% of my day, but 50% of my middle school day would be spent around playing Uno. And just all of the things that come out during just continued time with these kids. And again, holding that space. I was thinking about this the other day, is that as adults, we have to take intentional time to go to therapy. You take time off of work, you take time to literally go and work on yourself. And that's similar to what these kids are doing when they come into our office. We're giving them a break from, outside activities at home or video games or school. And we're giving them the space to say, what is it that you're thinking about? What is your brain thinking? How are you feeling? And how can we kind of address that? Yeah.
Yes.
I am just going to address the question here is to be able to read body language is a big part of these sessions. Exactly. Yes. So kind of being able, again, kind of with that verbalization, is that sometimes we notice as therapists, hey, this kiddo is getting really dysregulated. They can't sit still anymore. They are shaking all over the place. Their face is getting kind of contorted. Maybe I just completely shut down and I just checked out. And so being able to reflect to them hey, I just wonder about this. I just noticed this. Can you help me understand what that was about? Can we work on that together? Oftentimes what we talk about in just our crisis planning, or just even in the beginning of what does this feeling look like for you? Can you tell me, if I walked in the room when you were mad, what would that look like? What would I see in your body? What would I hear in your voice? What would others be saying about you? What does sad look like? And so kind of that us looking at their body language and helping them understand, and also having them kind of reflect that. Well, I feel tight here when this happens, or maybe I suddenly get a stomach ache or a headache, and I can't quite figure out what that's about. Well, it turns out maybe we're anxious. So yeah. So we had a question about play therapy and telehealth. And Alicia and I both talked about this and said, this is the elephant in the room that we should probably address. And we have to do it. So go for it, Alicia. Tell them what it is.
Yes. So we've been doing telehealth for over a year now, which sounds crazy.
Yeah.
And at first we were panicked. I mean, we were like, how do we do this over a screen with these little kiddos? I mean, first of all, with anybody, but let alone these little kiddos. And so it was a lot of learning. And we're in all these sort of like big Facebook groups, and all these therapists were like asking each other questions and throwing ideas at each other because everybody was just panicked. Like, how do we do this? And come to find out, I mean, we can still do play therapy over telehealth, and it actually can still turn out really wonderful. One of my favorite things that has given the kiddos an opportunity, like to invite me into their world and their space. You know, they show me their rooms and all their favorite toys. And I mean, I've seen so many ceilings and fans and I mean, whatever, but
besides that,
yeah, don't quite know how to hold the camera all the time, but it's just, I think it's turned out to be really great. You know, you get to really meet the kid where they're at. Have had to do a little bit more just directive techniques. Scavenger hunts are one of my favorites, but can still do games. So like an example, sometimes a game you could have, like maybe you and the kiddo both happen to have a board game and you can play that together, or you can join games online together and play through the computer screen. I've even had some success using some non-directive techniques too, where the kiddos are just in their room and they're playing out their stuff with their own toys. And so it's just been really great. And I think it's really forced us to be very creative, but the kids have really just rose to the challenge too. And so it's been surprisingly okay and has gone actually really well, I would say, over telehealth.
Yeah. I'll just add more to that. I remember kind of moving on to telehealth and like sitting down and doing research and pulling up a blank Word document and just like typing like everything I could about how to do telehealth over play therapy. And I ended up with sheets and sheets of ideas. And the true thing about it is that we hold space for the client and we build a relationship with them. And so we can do that over a screen. It's not quite the same, but we can give them that space. Similarly, kind of offering, having parents, kind of coaching parents to do like non-directive of like, here's a basket of toys that has some of these themes that we've been working on. And the kids will play out, and I will get out my Batman and Robin, which I just had out earlier, and be playing on the screen, Batman and Robin, you know, and the parents walk in and I've got like Batman on the screen. So, you know, I think it works. I think, you know, there was a little bit of panic because we had to be flexible and we didn't know what that would look like. And also just knowing that kids were going through all of this change too. So as we were adjusting to the pandemic, so were they. And so we wanted to make sure that we were providing space for our clients and that they were able to process all of these changes that we were working through too, but like in an adult way. And kids kind of have had, you know, increased mental health concerns just around all of these changes and instability that have been in our world in the last year. And so that's been difficult. And also, you know, we're able to support them through that. The other thing that I was going to mention with that is I think that, you know, it sometimes works. There are some kids that I have found actually have done better than I would have imagined in virtual play therapy, especially my middle schoolers, because that's their whole world is screens. And so they know the technology way better than I do. They can be the leader and I'll be the follower. And so sometimes it's actually allowed them the space and just kind of giving them a sense of just comfort in the fact that they don't have to be eye to eye with me in the same room. They're talking over a screen like they do to all of their friends. And so that has been kind of actually helpful for some of my kids that I didn't expect it to go well. So, yeah. So the last thing that we have is kind kind of talking about how to get into therapy. And so, Alicia, do you want to talk a little bit about that? And I can add.
Yeah. So the process here at YSS, you call into any of our offices. You can find those numbers on our website, and just, say you're, wanting to get your kiddo seen for therapy. That first session will be what's called an assessment. That's really just an information gathering session. You find information about the kiddo and the family and kind of what's been going on. You get just a really big picture of things. And then after that, that session may or may not be with a therapist that you continue to see. But after that, that's when the therapy gets started. And if that therapist is deciding that play therapy is the route you'll go, that's how you move forward. And again, right now, we are still over telehealth. So we'll be meeting we use Skype. But again, we just kind of talked about how it works. And so we are definitely still doing play therapy over telehealth.
Yeah, I was definitely going to say that video that we keep talking about. We're talking about telehealth and play therapy. And I walked in that room and I was kind of sad because it was so clean. And I was like, it never looks this good, but nobody's been in here for so long. And so I don't know about you, Alicia, but I am just really hoping very, very soon, when it's safe, of course, that we will get back to that playroom. I know I've got kiddos who have just been asking nonstop for the last 12 months when we're going to be able to be back in that room. And so I can't wait for that. But also we need to continue to be safe and want to protect everybody. So hopefully that's soon. But the other thing too is that you can also go on the Registered Association for Play Therapy website as well, and find a registered play therapist in your area. Right now with the mental health community and just kind of everything going on in our world, sometimes those may be quite a bit of a wait. Just to kind of give you fair warning. But hopefully, we can get you in, get you seen, and started on some therapy and some supports. So we did want to make sure that you guys all know that you can tune in next week, same time right here, Facebook Live. Next week, we're going to be talking. Terry Bailey's going to be here for National Foster Care Month and kind of addressing that topic. So thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
Yeah, thank you so much.